All right. Well, maybe we'll get started. I hope that everybody is in his or her place. So off we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, wherever you are. It's wonderful to be with you today. We're deeply grateful for this opportunity, frankly, to be with like-minded individuals. We all know that we're not always with like-minded individuals, but putting our shoulders together to restore this precious planet. You know, it's been said that nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something, and especially when we collaborate. Please know that today this webinar is recorded, number one. And number two, if you want to say hello, let others know or where you're from or something else, go to the chat box. And if you have questions, be sure to put them in the question box. At 1:30 or so, we will have reached the end of the formal presentation, and that will leave us about 15 minutes for the Q&A. If we don't get to your question, make sure that you reach out to us. If it's a question that's important to you, we would be delighted to connect more personally. EcoPsy, in essence, as we envision it at least, will become what we all do with it. So slide number 2, please. In this webinar, this is the run of show, so to speak. And what we will do is to address the first few topics. I'll take the next couple of minutes, and then I'll hand things off to Harriet Shugarman of ClimateMama fame, who will discuss the next topics. And then Colleen Rollins, our gifted and patient editorial manager, will run through the how-to, the show and tell, and other practical matters. And then Robin Cooper will be up next. She is president of the Climate Psychiatry Alliance, and she will tie things up, emphasizing the spirit that we hope will bring us to work together to grow this, sustainably built, of course, so that that sort of town hall-like effort that we envision pools our talents and resources. A special shout out is warranted really to Ray Takvir, who expertly helped engineer us this project in its formative years. And there are also two very special people, directors of this project, psychoanalyst and author Dr. Sally Weintrobe, and author and explorer extraordinaire, Ginny Michaux. Slide 3, please. Why EcoPsy? As much as the physical aspects of climate disruption have been addressed, the psychological aspects have largely been underreported. After recent testimony given to the city council of a major American city, I won't say which one, for example, after hearing about the emotional toll of extreme weather and anxiety about future conditions, a member of the council said, "Oh, I hadn't thought of the psychological consequences." And yet, it is the psychological consequences, as most of us probably realize, that affect everything: our economies, our politics, our communities and families, ourselves, and of course, the rest of the living world. So I bet you have sometimes spent hours scouring the internet for information on topics related to climate and mental health. And then, having found it, discover that it's behind a paywall, and an expensive one at that, or alas, that the material is out of date or held little practical value. Maybe the writing was not reader-friendly. We realized an Ecopsychepedia could fill these gaps with a collection of reliable, up-to-date material freely available to everyone that could educate the public, policymakers, and other professionals about the reality of the psychological aspects underpinning climate disruption, and more broadly, of course, the whole concept of climate and mental health. We also realized that it would awaken in them, anyone who came to our site, an awareness of the opportunities that this knowledge has to help promote solutions with climate-aware policies, good reporting, teaching, and let's acknowledge it, informed voters. Slide 4, please. Embracing interdependencies, admitting that the psychological aspects of climate disruption have been underreported and need our attention. But psychological health doesn't exist in a vacuum. As Gary Cohen of Healthcare Without Harm says, you can't have healthy people on an unhealthy planet. If society is riven with discord and fear, if the environment in which we live is in an accelerating state of degradation, if people don't understand the problem, much less how to solve it, how can we be healthy psychologically? We live on a planet that needs healing. The knowledge that our interconnectedness is what we depend on to sustain this web of life is sometimes overlooked at our peril. EcoPsy is designed to address this and other issues, such as the vulnerabilities that social disparities deepen and may be unseen by those living in privileged circumstances. Next slide, please. Our mission is to gather information at a central spot so it can easily be found, and, as a future slide will spell out, to turn what we know or have learned into what we in turn do. This town hall-like model is a place to discuss the problems that we face, to be sure, but it also calls upon us to make sure that we engage in solutions and that we put what we have learned about our climate problems using a utilitarian eye by looking at how we can use this information to drive change quickly. Sometimes it may come down, as the late, great John Lewis said, to making good trouble or standing up and speaking even when our voice shakes. We are resourceful and resilient, but nature's most complicated creature, humans, to survive, must learn to live wisely. When it comes to good new ideas about how to do that, we are open for business. Get in touch with us. We hope you will become involved in what has been conceived of in EcoPsy as belonging to all of us, with the writing, editing, vetting, or whatever you're interested in and eager to share. Thank you, and I'll hand the mic over to Harriet Shugarman.
Thank you, Lise, and hello, everyone. Lise has done an excellent job in setting the stage for us and answering the question, why EcoPsy? You've heard our mission and our intentions around this project. So what I want to do now is share with you our broad vision. Our primary thinking in this regard is that EcoPsy is about sharing knowledge in the climate mental health space. Obviously, right? But more specifically, our ideas center around how to nurture the exchange of ideas across disciplines and sectors, how to build effective communication, understand our climate emotions, support people experiencing climate-related mental health impacts, build resiliency, inform policy, and inspire climate action. Next slide, please. Now on to a more direct and perhaps a personal view. This project is for you and how you can utilize this resource. The EcoPsy is meant for everyone. It's for Joanna, a mental health professional, for Samir, a policy and congressional staffer, for Kai, who's a researcher on sea level rise, for Zuri, a young college student, for Arun, a middle school teacher, and Michelle, a local elected council person. Can you see yourself here? I work with many teachers like Arun, who wants to include climate change in his lesson plans, but he's worried about scaring his students. As a college professor myself, I meet many young people like Zuri who are feeling anxiety and helplessness about the future, betrayed by government inaction, feeling isolated. Many of you here today are mental health professionals like Joanna, and you have clients who are having apocalyptic nightmares about their child's future and their own, and they tell you they're doom scrolling through climate news. Where do they go? They come and can come to the Ecopsychepedia. Next slide, please. So hopefully now you can see who the Ecopsychepedia is for, why we see it as an important resource for everyone. And in this slide, we make many interconnections that having this knowledge provides. Now, this may seem like a simple slide, but it has so much in it. So while I'm going over each of these 4 bubbles with you, I'd like to draw your thinking to how these 4 areas are connected and interconnected. The role that climate psychology can play as a resource in equipping us to be resilient agents of change is a critical part of how we learn to live with climate reality and find ways to move forward, to build resolve, and to respond, each of us in our own way. So we know that emotions and knowledge are drivers of action, and that when we see others taking meaningful action, we can engage, and we see people engage. Actions themselves can buffer the effects of anxiety and grief, and then being involved in collective action can truly change our culture and the future. And now I have the honor and the opportunity to pass the microphone to our esteemed editor and project manager, Colleen Rollins, who's going to take us on a tour.
Thank you so much, Harriet. So I'm delighted to move on to a main reason why we've invited you to this webinar, which is to show you what the Ecopsychepedia is, how to navigate it, and how to get involved. Without further ado, let me just briefly change my share screen to open up the website. Welcome to the Ecopsychepedia, which is a trusted source for current research and thinking on how psychological factors drive the climate crisis, how the worsening crisis affects us psychologically, and what we can do about it. You can easily see here as we scroll through our mission, the acknowledgements, and at the top, it's very easy to learn more about the Ecopsychepedia, who we are, and our partners. Because we're covering that today in our webinar, what I want to focus on here is showing you our entries and our resources. There are 2 ways that we can navigate the Ecopsychepedia. The first one is based on these 9 thematic categories that we've identified within climate psychology. These are denial, climate emotions, equality and justice, the power of culture, nature as healer, relationships, resilience and regeneration, mental health impacts, and success stories. The second way to navigate EcoPsy is our A to Z glossary of entries. Here you can see in alphabetical order the diversity of entries we have already published on the ways the climate crisis intersects our inner and social lives and how these influence one another. We have air pollution and climate mental health, activists and psychological distress, climate or eco-anxiety, behavior change, confirmation bias, denial, climate-related disasters, disability and mental health, extreme heat, healthcare policy, indigenous knowledges, and so many others. I want to emphasize that even with this list, we are just scratching the surface. Over time, we will build out this glossary to cover many more topics, hopefully with your voices. We envision this platform to share a wide range of knowledges, perspectives, and expertises. To show you an entry, I'll take this example of one of the people that Harriet was describing, Zuri, who is a young person grappling with complex climate emotions. They might choose to navigate the Ecopsychepedia based on one of our entry categories, probably climate emotions. Here, as they're scrolling through, they might come across a word they don't know, solastalgia. So they open it up to learn more. On this entry, I want to draw your attention to our table of contents. This is relatively uniform across our entries, but there is some variation in the subheadings depending on the topic. We always start with an introduction of what the topic is. In this case, solastalgia is when you feel homesick for a home you never left. We then move to talking about the origin of the topic and its relationship to the climate crisis. Here, solastalgia was a term coined by the Australian philosopher Glenn Albrick in the early 2000s. He used Edvard Munch's The Scream to illustrate some of the ways that solastalgia can feel. In the next section, we talk about the links between the topic and mental health practice, psychology, or human behavior. Solastalgia is not a diagnosable medical condition, but it is a normal response to our climate reality. The unequal experiences or impacts section is an essential part of every entry. We know that climate change does not affect everyone equally, with disproportionate impacts on people who contributed to it the least. Impacts depend on exposure, as well as pre-existing vulnerabilities, which can vary based on health, geographic location, social factors, income, age, food security, racial inequality, and so many others. We know that there are deep links between climate change, colonialism, extractivism, and exploitation. All of these impact mental health, our support networks, and capacity to adapt. Our entry on climate justice and reparations has a briefer on many of these issues, as well as why justice is central to climate psychology and a strong commitment of ours. Next section is on current thinking about a topic. We use the term research here, but this section is for any and all forms of knowledge that aim to deeply explore and understand a given topic. We often follow this with next directions, whether this is for research, policy, or citizen engagement. And finally, for some people, the most important section of all, what can I do about it? For every topic, we offer concrete solutions, and often these come at different levels, from individual to societal to nationwide. And to finish, each entry has a comprehensive list of further reading, which includes both articles cited in the entry as well as additional ones. And these are in different formats. We often give books, news articles, music, art, peer-reviewed scientific papers. This entry was published by Ray Takver, who was the editor and project manager for EcoPsy before passing the role to me. I want to take a moment to appreciate her work, from co-designing the website and template for entries, to developing training materials for writers and reviewers, to editing and publishing our first batch of entries, and so much more. Ray is a core person in EcoPsy's growth who has set us on a path for success. I want to draw your attention to an important feature of these entries, which is that they are updatable. The Ecopsychepedia is designed to be a dynamic reference work, meaning that we strive to keep our entries up to date on current thinkings and happenings, such as new research, events, ideas. We're only in the second year of this project, so we're just beginning to go back and update our first batch of entries. And if you see something that's out of date, please let us know. This website is intended to be responsive to this evolving knowledge. I just wanted to go through a second article briefly to really get the feel for the structure of these entries. So consider another one of the people that Harriet described, Samir, who was a congressional aide writing policies on air pollution. You might choose to navigate the Ecopsychepedia based on the search box in our glossary and look for air pollution. On opening it up, he'll read a concise explanation of what air pollution is, how it is created, the different types of air pollution, the links between air pollution and climate change, He'll learn about how air pollution harms the body and the brain, and about how these harms affect our mental health and brain function, from the links between air pollution and different mood-related disorders, psychiatric disorders like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, ADHD, as well as degenerative conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and even affects our general ability to think. You'll read about the unequal impacts, how air pollution is especially harmful to children, the elderly, and pregnant women, and how air pollution is often higher in poor communities, in low and middle income countries, and for racial and ethnic minorities, meaning that these communities will also experience greater mental health impacts of air pollution. You can read a bit about other things we might want to know, such as the mechanisms, ultrafine particulate matter, and the training and education we need. And finally, learn about what we can do about it, which in this entry is especially targeted to policy initiatives and political action. Our entries are the main fruit of EcoPsy, but I also want to briefly show you our resources section. Now, this space is in development, but our vision is to build it out to include any relevant resources on how to help each other navigate how we feel and respond to the climate crisis, whether that's lesson plans, presentation slides, discussion guides, and so much more. So for example, we have for parents and caregivers, and in this section, we have a few resources on how to talk to kids about climate change. For example, here's a Just the Facts talk script for elementary school students. And this one was put together by the Climate Mental Health Network. If you have relevant resources, please share them with us. We want to amplify them here. We consider this as a space, as a commons of resources. And the last thing I wanted to show you is how to get involved. There are many ways to participate. You can participate as a writer, as a reviewer or mentor, as a volunteer, a partner, or a funder or donor. And if you want to get involved, you can just click this button to see our sign-up form. And we'll get back to you as soon as we can. It's a pretty short form. You can also always email us at our email, which is ecopsychepedia@gmail.com, which you can find at the bottom of the webpage of every page on our website. And before I pass this on to Robin, I just want to emphasize that this is just the beginning, and we're really excited for this to grow and share it with you. So now I'll pass this back to Robin Cooper, who is the co-founder and president of the Climate Psychiatry Alliance.
Thank you, Colleen, for this excellent way of showing our audience how to navigate and what the content is of our Ecopsychepedia. So I just want to recap where we are. I want to remind you where we've already spoken about. This is the Ecopsychepedia is intended to be a trustworthy, up-to-date, free, reader-friendly information source with a wide range of independent topics. It sheds light on the inequalities and disparities of the climate crisis, and it emphasizes what we all can do about it. We see this as a place for material from the wide range of climate psychology and mental health and climate change. Remember that this crosses disciplines and sectors, and that this is designed for the many different interested folks with different needs. Colleen has already shown us the many topics that we have in the breadth of entries. Such a spectrum, and we celebrate this wide range. Next slide, please. But we are just beginning this work, and we've been planting the seeds and are now entering our second year. We are proud to bring this public unveiling to you with so many entries already. I think we have 28, and there are a lot in the pipeline. but we expect this to grow and grow. And that will take nurturing and tending our metaphoric garden. Next slide. This is a living compendium, and we expect to add over time and to fill the current gaps in content, adding new ideas and information as it grows in this rapidly expanding field of climate psychology. We welcome your participation and feedback. This is a place for many. Next slide. Colleen has also already showed you the ways to get involved and the many ways that people can get involved. Writers, we are always seeking more entries and articles as we grow this site. Expert reviewers to help us assure quality and truly offer trusted content. Partners amplifying our information, sharing with your organizations to make sure that the Ecopsychepedia is actually used and not on some shelf in the corner. And funders, as all projects, we cannot do this without a stable financial foundation. So we need funders and grant writers to help us stay solvent. Next slide. So this is who we are. The two organizations that this is the primary project of, Climate Psychiatry Alliance and Climate Psychology Alliance North America. Next slide. But we are much more than our two sponsoring organizations. This is our current leadership team, but there are many individuals who have started this project and contributed to the early efforts. And I want to give a special shout out to the Climate Psychology Alliance for their strong engagement in the field of psychology and contributions to this project. I also want to make sure that we acknowledge again Ray Tokfer's early establishment of our framework. She's already been acknowledged. And Annalise Fisher for her generosity and extraordinary talent with graphics. Thank you to all of these early contributors. Next slide. So who are you? Where do you fit in? There is a place for many of you. How do you see yourself fitting in? Next slide. Just to acknowledge the wide range of current authors and contributors. And as I have said, there are many more in the pipeline. I want to give a special gratitude to these early authors and writers. Next slide. And a special gratitude to our initial early funders, the Reese family and Sage Wheeler, for their early confidence in us and this project and helping us to get started. And then now I want to turn it back to Harriet Shugarman, who can guide us through some of the questions and things that you might have on your mind that we can address today. Thank you very much for being here with us on this extraordinary unveiling of what we think is a major contribution to our work in climate crisis. Harriet?
Thank you, Robin, and thank you everyone for being here with us. And we hope that you'll stay for some more minutes to come and put your questions about the project in the Q&A box, and we will try our best to answer them. So I know we've covered this already in some way, shape, and form, but maybe if we could get a reiteration of ways that individual researchers could contribute to the project, especially when they publish new research. And then a related question to that is, are there specific topics or contributions that we are looking for? So if I can throw that back maybe to Robin or Colleen, do you want to?
This is intended to be, as we've said, the whole range of the scope of the field of climate psychology. And there are enormous topics, and there's a place for almost all of you, everyone, to bring what matters to you to this site. But Colleen has in her back pocket a spreadsheet of some of the things that we think we need to add and fill the gaps that we know exist. And so I want to give Colleen a moment to chime in on that.
Definitely. And just to the first question, for individual researchers wanting to get involved, yes, definitely. I would see the best way to get involved is to fill out our sign up form on our Get Involved page or to email us. The aim of the Ecopsychepedia is that we have this content in a concise and reader-friendly format. And so new research, I suppose we'd want it to formatted to our entries and share it in that way. We think the uniformity of our entries is also important to help readers understand what content is going to be there and what sections to expect. So getting in touch would be the way to do that, and we can start that conversation. And on the other topics, we have brainstormed a long list. So again, if you want to get in touch, we'd be happy to share that with you and talk about what specific topics you're interested in. But it is a very broad field that encompasses so much.
Thanks, Colleen. Lise, I see you want to add to.
Yeah, I want to make a
jump in.
comment.
Yes.
As I've listened to everything. I just want to warn everybody before they leave, don't anybody try to steal Colleen.
Thanks. There's a question about how entries are being curated and then vetted. Sally, do you want to help there?
Yes, I think this is an evolution. What we're doing to start with is that every time somebody writes an entry or a couple of people write an entry, it goes through quite an elaborate editorial process. And then we look for what we consider to be experts in the field to help us evaluate the entry. And to see and to make sure that it's not just somebody's own ideas about the subject, but covers the field to the, wisely. So, but we are evolving this, and our structures are also at an early phase. We're aware that we need to elaborate them, be more formal about the different groups of people involved in our process. But we have sought and worked hard to seek experts in the field to look over the entries. And very often they do ask for changes, and it's a collaboration.
Thanks, Sally. Lise, maybe do you want to, someone's asking how the project got started as well.
Well, yes, without being too stream of consciousness because I'll take too long. But I think that all of us can probably identify with this, and that is that we started in one place with a number of different people who were involved in what we thought was going to be our answer to an inconvenient truth. And as we worked, we realized that we needed to be a little bit more laser-like in our approach, and that this evolved over time with the sort of collective intelligence of the group. And so I say this is so important because sometimes we hesitate to throw ourselves into something, but throw yourself in. You just don't know the people you're going to meet along the way and how your idea is going to evolve into something. It is really the diversity too of skills and opinions, as we've seen just in our small group, that has meant that we could do this. And I just want to say one more thing, and that is what an amazing group of people we work with on climate. Just a special, I know we said it earlier, but Ray left this project to embrace another opportunity. But before she left, She found us Colleen. She didn't just leave us. She left us in these excellent hands. So that was something that really marked me and makes me think about what is characteristic of the people who work in climate. We do try to help each other. And as for these slides, which admittedly are much more beautiful, I think, than any of us could have accomplished, we really do have the artistic talent of Annalise Fisher. So wanted to underscore that. So jump in.
And Robin, maybe we'll take one or two more questions. But Robin, you had a slide about this is for everyone, and there's some questions on, is there space for a student youth voice? Is this for clinicians only? Maybe can you help reiterate who and who this is for?
This is for those wide range. It is not just limited to clinicians or people with already in the scope of climate psychology. We are wanting to expand this to the many, many people, particularly one of the entries identified public health. Yes, this is also for those in public health. There's also an entry, a question about cancer survivors or youth or others who can participate, but also bring important voices. That goes back to the slide that Harriet went through, where we tried to personalize those to the scope of people that this can have an impact on and who can contribute and benefit. We want this to be broadly viewed and broad contributors.
Thanks.
Colleen, could I add something there?
Please.
Not only are we hoping to provide a resource for not just mental health professionals, but students, undergraduates and postgraduates, but also to invite them to offer to write for us, because there's nothing like tackling one of these entries to really get to understand the subject. So, it's a form of engagement as well, I would add.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
If
Go
I
ahead,
If
Robin.
I just respond to one of the entries, one of the questions or comments at this moment, a different topic, I want to acknowledge Wendy Greenspan, who is in our organization, Climate Psychology Alliance North America, and she underscores how important the voice of the disproportionate impacts and disparities are. And I want to just make an acknowledgement. We know that there are gaps, important gaps in entries that have a particular focus on that. Please, if that's an area that you are able to contribute to, we would welcome that enormously.
Todd Sack, our good friend Todd Sack, who is the chair of the board of the Physicians for Social Responsibility. Wonderful to see you here today, Todd. Todd said, do we have a tab? And this is what I mean about how this sort of town hall type format leads to so many interesting comments, ideas, etc. He said, do we have a tab that is dedicated to what mental health professionals, for example, can do? Because that is something that I think could be very useful. So Todd, thank you for that. We're listening.
And there's also a question about other formats. There are several questions about will there be videos? Is this going to be shared in other formats? Colleen, do you want to weigh in there?
Sure. I mean, as the others have said, this resource is very much still evolving. At this time, the main format is in these written entries that we offer, but as I showed everyone, we also have the resources section where we're very happy to share resources in any format, amplify things that are already created or create new ones. Yeah, it's the world is the oyster.
Thanks, Colleen. And there was a question about where the resource is based. Robin or Lise?
I'm going to have someone else respond to that because I'm typing some answers.
Well, I think right now what we have especially is the resources are under each article. because they were specifically selected because they amplify what is in the article, giving people additional opportunities to learn more. But we will also have undoubtedly a whole section on resources. And also perhaps we might think of a glossary going forward. Sometimes it's really convenient to be able to check the definition of something that we've heard maybe often, but want to really have a precise definition of. So there are lots of places that will grow, and it'll be in response to questions that come from people or offers to do things from people who are aware of EcoPsy and what we're hoping to do together.
Thank you. And maybe this will be the last question, and then we'll pull it all together. But maybe to you, Sally, there's a question about cultural heritage loss, language, traditional arts, culinary traditions, and where that seems to not be here yet.
Well, this is the kind of thing we want to hear. And we're very open to this. It's an incredibly important part of culture, the list that's just been mentioned. So thank you for raising that, and perhaps get in touch if you can help.
Absolutely. And I want to just bring your attention. We do have one entry on Indigenous, the impacts on Indigenous communities. We're very proud of that, but it is definitely not enough. As Sally said, yes, we welcome your contributions.
And the final question, and then I'm going to ask Lise to close us out. Colleen, is there a move about languages? Will this be available in other languages?
It's definitely something that we've considered and thought about. And I think it'll have to be based on when we have the resources to do that. We would love it to be available in all the languages. Unfortunately, we don't have a translator working with us right now, but if we have the resources, then we will try to do that in our plan.
Thank you. And Lise, as you opened it, would you like to say a few words to?
Sure. Certainly in appreciation for my colleagues here and for all of the people who made this possible, but also for the larger community, the community here that is watching this recording, but the whole community of climate activists, frankly. We would have preferred not to have it come to this, that our planet would be in peril for us to be together. But I will say that if there's anything that I realize that has given me something really important in my life, it's to be with such extraordinary people every day who bring a sense of purpose, a meaning to my life, and have a sense of social justice, always pushing them forward and pushing them together. So there's, on the one hand, the reality of what we're struggling for and with. And of course, on the other hand, we have an exceptional opportunity to do what we must do at this particular time, and to do it with all of these extraordinary people. So thank you.